Thank you all for coming for another weekend where I am going to talk about things related to public transportation. Now, if you're wondering about this line, Modernizing Rail 2021 registration form, this is a conference that a bunch of us on Transit Twitter, and not purely American Transit Twitter either, are organizing in order to transmit best practices for mainline rail planning, so commuter and intercity rail. Head over and click, and I'm going to make this available in the video description below. We have an exciting announcement for this, which is the keynote speaker for this is going to be Congressman Seth Moulton, who's going to talk to us about issues related to the politics of infrastructure in the United States. Now, with that out of the way, this is not going to be a stream about the United States. This is going to be a stream about where I live, and where I live is Berlin. Now, first time I ever streamed, and this is not online because I did not realize that I needed to actually hit record the first time. I did a stream where I was just drawing what we call crayon. So this is taking a map and then drawing lines that we think should be built. This is called crayoning. It's kind of a derogatory term. It's like kids drawing in crayon. And instead of, so the first 2 weeks of this was just me crayoning high-speed rail for the United States. And now, instead, I'm going to crayon where I live, which is Berlin. So what kinds of improvements to mainline rail, as well as the subway, should be made in Berlin? Now, I'm gonna start with a map of some, but not all of the things, and we're gonna add to the map as we go along. And I would like to also let people know that Berlin is not a static infrastructure city. Now, New York is a static infrastructure city, unfortunately. That is, New York is building basically nothing. They're slowly building Second Avenue subway phase 2. There's also the Como Pet project, the LaGuardia air train, which I hope is not long for the world because it actually is worse than building nothing. Yeah, Berners. It's from London Reconnections. So it's so it started as a London term, but it hopped the pond. So the plans in Berlin are not like in New York. So Berlin, I think, has a lot of problems with how it's building, and I also think it's not building enough. However, Berlin is building things. And on the map, so this is going to be the map. So there's a mechanism that I use for making the maps. It is called, so there's a piece of code that I use for it, and because I never bothered updating that piece of code, it's still in Python 2. And so this is all 256 by 256 pixel things from OpenStreetMaps, but they have been pasted into something much bigger. So the code just automatically grabs and pastes, so that I don't have to do, what is it, 10496, 41 by 35. So I don't need to manually do 1435 things. Too bad it was so close. I was hoping it was going to be something like 1488, but you can't always get what you want. So, in Berlin, we have the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn. We also separately have something called the Regionalbahn, which I'm not going to depict. But it is going to be somewhat important, and I'm going to mention a little bit where the Regionalbahn plays in, because I think it could be used better than it is being used right now. So the U-Bahn has colors. So the U-Bahn lines have consistent colors on the maps. And these are the consistent colors that I'm using. I think that I might be using a different one for U3, I'm not sure. The S-Bahn is usually in green. The S-Bahn lines also separately have their own colors, but usually on maps they're depicted in green. because there's so much track sharing between different lines. And Berlin is expanding both systems. Now, I want to make it very clear, Berlin is expanding the U-Bahn and Berlin is expanding the S-Bahn. But I don't think it does so optimally. So let's discuss what it should be doing. So what Berlin should be doing, yes, it's called terrible Python code, yes. But every code that I wrote is definitionally terrible. So, I mean, if I say I wrote bad Python code, it's like saying Andrew Cuomo lied. AfD said something fascist. So you can already kind of see what I'm calling for, but again, it's not everything, and we're going to add some. But I do want to highlight that there are two different colors, sorry, not colors, stroke styles being used for expansion. So if it is solid, it means it exists. So for example, you see the solid dark blue line, this is U8. This is its station that exists. It's called Hermannstrasse. I've been there many times. Light blue, it's U7 again, exists. This is called Neukölln. So this entire neighborhood is called Neukölln, but this was the first intersection of the U-Bahn with the S-Bahn here. So this station got to hog the name Neukölln, even though it is not the most important Neukölln station. The most important is probably Hermannplatz. And so you can take these trains, right? So I used to live here, so yeah, I would sometimes, yeah, let's say take this train here to Merindam. Now, if the line is not solid but in a heavy dash, so let's look here, then this means that this is under construction or will be under construction soon. So the new airport is this. So they've actually built quite a lot of rail tunneling, and I can't actually figure out the cost of that, just to serve the new airport station. So the S-Bahn here branches a lot, and one of these branches used to go to the old airport, which is here, and then they just built this expansion so that these trains would be able to get to the airport. There's an S-Bahn train every 10 minutes, but it's every 20 minutes on one branch and every 20 minutes on another branch and go to different parts of the city. And there are plans, and there are also, by the way, intercity trains serving the airport from both directions, and also like United Bonds using the same tunnels as the intercity. So there are plans to expand U7 all the way to the airport. And likewise, there are, and I don't think there's shovels in the ground yet, but it's under active planning. They're saying it's going to be open in the early 30s, which is too late. They should accelerate this, but it's, I think, at this point decided. Now, this is also dashed. This means, so it's called the Siemens-Bahn because before the war, and I guess during the war, this used to be called Siemensstadt. You can see the label here, the Siemensstadt. This used to be the main works of Siemens in Berlin, with a rather based head, in fact, a physicist named Hans Ferdinand Meyer, who, out of personal hate for Hitler, decided to go to then neutral Norway, hence the Oslo report, and then write a report of, I believe, 7 typed pages that summarized German technological and scientific capabilities, which was said to be the most important single piece of intelligence that Britain received in the war. And of course, there were bigger things like cracking the Enigma, but many, like thousands of people worked on that, and this was one person. So a rather based person ran this. And there used to be a railway here. There used to be an S-Bahn branch over here, but then after the war, this shut down. Berlin deindustrialized, especially West Berlin. East Berlin kept some industry because the communists believed that heavy industry was kind of inherently moral. So I don't know if it's going to be visible. It might actually be visible on open on OSM and not just Google Earth, but there is some industry left in Lichtenberg, for example, because there was no industrial job sprawl, and there was no suburbanization of jobs, and there was also no deindustrialization. They kind of stuck to early 20th century ways of doing industry in the Soviet bloc. But in the West it changed, and also West Berlin was surrounded, so this shut down, and now this is being revived as a kind of redevelopment, and I don't know what there's going to be there, but it's being set to be redeveloped, and they're building this new branch as we speak. Also on the list of things that are actually happening, but later than I think they should, is this. There's a U8 expansion, which has been promised for decades. There are two, I think, notable big suburban high-rise housing projects in Berlin. So the first one is called Gropiusstadt, and this was the one that actually has a subway. So this area is called Gropiusstadt. You can see the Gropiusstadt name kind of here. I have been there and actually took photos and posted them on Twitter. Just what it's like there. It's a modernist high-rise tower in a park type neighborhood. Uh, so if you're reading this from the United States, or if you're listening from the United States or Britain, you probably have negative connotations for this. And but it's still so this is the start of the thread. So we can see pictures of the buildings, pictures of the neighborhood center, and this is called Lipschitz Platz. And there's actually pretty good design there. The buildings are nice. I mean, so this building looks kind of meh. It's a library. But for the most part, the buildings look kind of nice. It's not like, again, it's not like what you expect if you have a very New York or London uh, idea of the project or council housing. And bear in mind, this is all social housing. It's not like, oh, it's high rises but rich people live in their like modern condos or like Hong Kong now. So this is the one where oh, hey Panko. So this is the one that was built in the 70s that actually has an U-Bahn connection. There's another one that was also built around that era that was promised an U-Bahn connection in 1970, which is called Märkisches Viertel. It is the opposite end of the city. Also, this was West Berlin. So this is very close to the wall, and when I visited, we actually crossed the wall there. So I'm trying to remember the exact route that we took. I don't think we did Wittenau and then here we went back from Wittenau, but I think the route there involved taking the S-Bahn and walking, or taking the S-Bahn and the tram. So there was actually a wall crossing around here, and Märkisches likewise is a high-rise, dense housing project, very tower in the park. I think it has more negative connotations than Gropiusstadt, maybe because Gropius was not involved. The buildings don't look any worse. It's not like the buildings are uglier or something, but there's nothing like Lipschitzplatz there. There's nothing that looks like a nice activated pedestrian-y, but thoroughly modernist urban renewal type urbanism in the center. But also there's no U-Bahn. This I think is more important. So U8 originally just went up until I think Gesundbrunnen and then was being slowly extended during the Cold War, which was rather awkward because U8 didn't serve anything in the center of the West. So this part, Mitte, was in the east. So U8 went nonstop from Wolkestrasse, which stopped at, and then Bernauer Straße had already skipped. down to Heinrich-Heine-Straße, which is where I live, was I think the last skipped stop, and then Moritzplatz was I think the first made stop. But if I'm wrong, then Cottbus-Sator was the first made stop. Cottbus-Sator was definitely made. And so you could, yeah, get there to get, you could use UA to get between Kreuzberg, which was at the time not a nice area, especially not Cottbus-Sator, or Neukölln, which was never a nice area, and Gesundbrunnen, but connections to the more interesting parts of the rest, you need to do other things. So you need to get to U1. So this is U1, which kind of became the main line of the U-Bahn in the Cold War in the West. And or you need to do, or you need to take U9, which is a Cold War line, connecting Gesundbrunnen with city center without passing through the east. And of course, likewise, there was also the U7 extension. U7, so U7 used to be a branch of U6. But then during the Cold War, this opened, giving direct connection from Neukölln to not quite the center of West Berlin. The center was here, not here. And now, post-Cold War, this section is much lower ridership than this section. But slowly they have expanded U8. They got to Wittenau, which is here in the 90s, and now with a 30-something year time skip, they're gonna go to Märkisches Viertel. So again, this is gonna happen. So it's dash. Yeah, U8 was really awkward. I think the poor reputation of U8 today is a legacy of that, to be honest. Which is kind of weird. I mean, the poor reputation of it is complete bullshit. I mean, the line is fine. I mean, yeah, there are some stations that are coming. There are stations that are coming on all the lines. It's just I think people are mostly looking for politically correct ways of saying that they're afraid of crime in Neukölln and Kreuzberg and in Gesundbrunnen, without saying that they're racist. But they are racist. And so anyway, this is the U8 extension. There's a third extension that I did not depict because an old crayon of mine depicted something else, which is a branch of U6 that I believe is gonna leave out of Schumacherplatz and go to Tegel. Now, Tegel no longer exists as an airport, but it is becoming a development hub, and I think this is what's gonna happen. Okay, let me see if in Morgan Post they have the map. More importantly, let's see if they let me actually check this without read this. No. No, you're not gonna do this for me? Okay. Now, we can find various lengthening plans on which are actually gonna happen, some might not. Oh, and in terms of the neighborhood actually wants the expansion, which means it's likelier to happen mostly because the wait, no, it's the other one. Oh, okay, so okay. Oh, right, but it's CDU, so nobody cares what they think. So let's see what we have here. So are they going to tell me about? Okay, so here, they're telling me about a green who wants U3 and U7 expanded, which is a good thing because the greens tend to be against expansions. Okay, so you can see so here there are some maps. So these are things that are being proposed. The ones that are, so this is the one that's definitively happening. So this might also, but the routing is less clear. So this is the U6 extension. So let's draw. So again, so I'm gonna draw it not in dash, which is so by the way, finally, this is this dash part. So Potsdamer Platz to here. This is S21, which is another north-south two-track S-Bahn trunk. The dotted lines are things that maybe people are proposing, but aren't guaranteed, or things that I'm proposing. So let's draw the things that are maybe a little bit more certain. So that's the U6. And I don't think they're going to use the old runways. I think the runways might turn into a pretend park like Tempelhof, and I emphasize pretend park and not real park because Tempelhof, it's absolutely used as a parade ground and it is a park ground. But for example, there are no trees there. So when I was there, the sun, it was so hot and there was no shade that I think I ended up having to drink an entire bottle of water just in the 10 minutes involving going from the park to Aldi and then going back. And then I got two water bottles, and the second one I finished during like at the actual park. It was that hot. So we're probably going to repeat the mistake here and mostly just redevelop the terminal area. Okay. So let's draw this. So we start here, and it's a very low resolution image, unfortunately. But I do appreciate that at least one green is in favor of this because Greens think trams are more moral than the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn, unfortunately. Okay, now they're talking to me about 170 million euros per kilometer, and they're saying only about ridership per kilometer that is actually not low. So not ridership per kilometer, cost per rider that is not especially high. Um, so, by the way, it's World War III, really. It's not filed, it's the first 2 days of it. It's my Twitter alt, which tells the story of World War III opening with Chinese plans for invasion of the United States, and then it becomes from invasion literature like a war. People want to see things like dabbling. So I'm gonna draw USEC right now. I think it's, and again, I don't know the exact route being taken, so and even things that are more definitive like U7 are not clear, so I'm just gonna draw it like this. Um, and and I also want to make it clear that the redevelopment here is also kind of unclear what they're going to do. They talk about a tech city because of this kind of booster thing where everything is called tech to make it sound cool. So we use width 10 and 129.109.16x. Okay, 129.109.16x. And width 10. Um, but again, this does not exist, so we cannot color it as if it exists. I'm going to color it in the. I'm gonna color it in the slightly less certain thing. So this rather than the dash. And now, when we're talking about stations that are being proposed, um, which for the Siemens Shutdown stations, these are actual proposals. I'm gonna. You see that these are white fillings versus gray fillings. Gray means not yet. So I'm gonna make guesses as to where the station should be. Okay, this is a rather bad location because it's basically just gonna be a park and ride. It's probably gonna be this, and then you maybe want to space them out like this. Um, I think the only one where the route is really certain is this. Just because there aren't too many options. Um, so this is the U6 extension, which despite it being dotted and not dashed, it's happening. And now, oh, thank you. Thanks. So yeah, Zukunftsmobilität is a technical advocacy website, rather like London Reconnections, a little bit more crayony. And yeah, and so here's the Felix Thomas post about things that should be done or things that can be done. And there are lots and lots and lots of things, and this includes also trams. Some of these tram ideas are not bad. So the idea of expanding this tram. So right now the trams are mostly Eastern, so they mostly just turn around Alexanderplatz, because that was the hub of the East. But now they're planning on extending this to Potsdamer Platz, which is not a bad idea. It's just that then they're planning on extending from Potsdamer Platz and Kulturforum down to Staglitz, right next to the S-Bahn, right next to the U9. So what's the point? Again, it's a really good link that I encourage people to read. I was craving a lot of ideas from it. And so, yep. Oh, hi. Oh, hi, Felix. I should say Felix, it's Felix. So, um, so for things that can be added, again, so in addition to U65, U78, so probably the next thing that is on the radar is going to be U9. So U9, despite being a Cold War line, is not weak. So let me see if I can find what Berlin, yeah. So this is a blog post that I wrote 2.5 years ago with some proposals, but don't look at the crayon, look at this. This is a map of lines in Berlin by how crowded they are. This is from a few years ago, and I don't just mean, 2016, yes. So obviously pre-corona, because for example, the blog post was pre-corona. So you can see what the busiest segments, and this is not train count, this is passenger count. The numbers here denote thousands of passengers per day, adding up both directions. So the eastern half of the ring is very busy. The Stadtbahn is very busy. Here it's just being weird because they're laying a bunch of different U-Bahn lines that don't actually share tracks, but the central parts of the north-south U-Bahn lines are very busy. So the really thick things are going to be U8, the central parts of U8 from Hermannplatz to Alexanderplatz, and to some extent up to Gesundbrunnen. A little bit U6, but I mean, it's slightly less busy than U8. You might notice that U7 actually drops in crowdedness at Millignam. Because people essentially on net transfer U7 to U8 here, because city center here, not here. U9 is actually very busy, because City West remains an important business district, even if it is not the only one. Kurfürstendamm is an important shopping street, even though as kind of the most famous street of Berlin, it lost that title to Unter den Linden, which is here. It's not on the map because this is the U5 expansion, not here. This is the U5 extension, and of course the U5 extension was not depicted in 2016 because it only opened in the middle of Corona. You can see even like two tiny lines is U55 before it was connected to U5, and U4. They run every 10 minutes. I mean, U5. No, U5 runs every 5. U55 used to run every 10 minutes. It's kind of like the frequency they give the shit lines. And of course, a line that's short every 10 minutes, why would anyone write it? And likewise, this is every 10 minutes. And you kind of see the weaker lines. So for example, tails like U3, maybe a tail of U9. But it's expected that, of course, tails should be weaker than trunks. You might also notice something, which is the north-south tunnel of the S-Bahn is less busy than the Stadtbahn. We're going to go back to this in a little bit. So, but first of all, U9 is a busy line because, again, there's a lot of stuff happening in City West. And here, it's actually pretty useful circumferential for the parts of Gesundbrunnen and Wedding that are not trying to be connected directly to Mitte. So this is why there are plans for U9. So yes, so as Felix mentioned, there's the U7 plan. I think the airport one is the more developed one. There's also one that I'm going to add a little bit. I'm going to add in a little bit for the other end. That's Stocken. Oh, Märkisches Viertel is only proposed. I thought it was definitely happening. Oh, and U6. Okay, so U6 to Tega. Okay, I thought it was still on the. I thought it was still on the list, but this might be a few months old. So there's this is U6 to Tegel, U9 to Panko, which is again kind of circumferential because it connects Panko uh, with stops in Gesundbrunnen and Wedding. So technically, the stop that's called Wedding is this, and the stop that's called Gesundbrunnen is this, but this is the neighborhood. This is the neighborhood. And there are also plans that I don't know what's going to happen with them to extend U2 one stop up to Pankow Kirche because it's maybe a little bit more central than the train station. These should be pursued. There's U3 to Mexico Platz. So U3 S-Bahn, U3 S-Bahn. Like it's understood that it's not going to be a high ridership expansion, but this is going to be very cheap to construct because it's going to be on the surface. So and it's also going to do some network connectivity. So this is why it is being proposed. So we're going to do this. Stroke style this and dash for expansion. And what's the color in here? 255102. Okay. So 255102. Yeah. So one stop just for network connectivity. This is Mexico Platz. Which again, it has decent support in the area. Now then there's U7 through Staaken, which is taking U7 and expanding it here, which is rather weird because it's really a tail. Because if you're here, if you're in Spandau, you're probably not riding U7 unless you're for some reason going specifically to this area, because the U7 comes every 5 minutes, and the S-Bahn here comes every 10 to Spandau. Right now, the way the Stadtbahn works going west is that every 10 minutes a train goes to Spandau, every 10 minutes a train goes to Potsdam, and every 10 minutes there's a train that just turns at Westkreuz because there's less demand going west than going east. So, but U7 is a good feeder, and that's fine. I mean, just because the feeder is an U-Bahn and not a tram, that doesn't make it bad. So, I don't remember the exact route that is being planned for this. Let me see if there's a good map for this. If not, if I can't crib Felix's map, I'm gonna crib. I'm gonna look at the official one. It's the wait, where's the map? No, it's not gonna be Flughafen Berlin-Brandenburg. Weißendem, Pankow, Märkisches, Tegel. Oh, there's no. Oh, Spandau und Falkensee. This is also a proposed expansion of the S-Bahn that we're going to crayon in a little bit because it is very useful. Because as I said, there's more demand west and east. So sorry, east and west. So you definitely want to rebalance. It's a good thing that that even that U2 is getting green support. So the Greens for Vildano are kind of a NIMBY party. So for example, they're against the redevelopment of they're against redeveloping the fringe of Tempelhof. I believe the SPD plan is 12,000 or 14,000 apartments. There was a referendum a couple years ago that failed, but opinions have changed, and in the polls this is rather popular right now. Parties in support include SPD, CDU, and FDP. Parties in opposition include Die Linke and the Greens. The Greens are almost certainly going to be the party of the party in power, the mayoral party, but it's going to stay green, red, red. So I'm probably going to vote SPD rather than in the city election and not green, and then vote probably green and not SPD in for the Bundestag. Um, I'm willing to be convinced on both, by the way, to flip. And but at any rate, the Greens tend to be a pro-tram party and a pro-bike party, and SPD tends to be the one that proposes the S-Bahn and U-Bahn expansion. Again, sometimes also with CDU and FDP, who also like cars. But I don't think people care that much what CDU thinks in the city anymore, especially with their most recent campaign attacking the Greens for bringing LGBTQ rights into schools, which the CDU campaign poster called an ideological experiment on children. They're going hardcore homophobe here, unfortunately. Um, but anyway, so a lot of these require kind of a yimbier city, unfortunately, than it is today. But with the Staaken expansion, I believe it's just going to be like this. So maybe instead of U6, if you wrote U7 Staaken, it would be easier to. And this is already being shown. Whatever. Okay, so this is the map, and we should now draw the map. So Wilhelmstadt, Heerstraße, which I believe is here. And the yes, this is Heerstraße, and then Staaken, really, Staaken would be about here. So yeah, so that's the expansion, and so let's draw. And I'm going to draw it not in the it's definitely happening color because it's still in planning. I believe it goes like this. And Army Street, Heerstraße. So let's see. Is the map going? Yeah, it's not very high resolution, unfortunately. Aktuelles Stadtteil. No, I don't want. Verlegen 7. Are we gonna have it here? I'm so annoyed that they're not showing actual maps of this. Anywhere. Like, it's actually hard to find maps of Berlin crayon in the media, whereas in Paris it's generally easier, I think. Um, it's not much better, but you go direct up and it's where this lands. Okay. And you kind of see that here they're uncertain about the routes also for the airport extension. So it's going up until about here. And as usual, we deal with the stroke tile, so 10 points, and this. And what's the color for U7? 155213. And the stops, remembering to make them in gray and not in white. Remember, white is for stops that already exist, gray is for stops that do not. Oh, it has a map for. Yeah. I mean, the point is that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the point is that it's not a very direct expansion, and it's mostly. I feel like it's mostly a feeder for this state for the for Rathaus Spandau, which is kind of a weird situation in which it might actually be better to build a tram, because if you know that people are going to ride for very short and all change at Spandau, uh, then frequency matters more. And I guess it's going to be 5 minutes either way, but so it matters more what the frequency is. Station access becomes important because especially if you depot, then you're adding 2 minutes of access time, and usually 2 minutes of access time are not something anyone cares about, but in this case, it is because the overall trip might only be 6 minutes. Even not from Staaken, but certainly from the intermediate stops. But again, at longer scale, again, so if you're going all the way to Tegel, the point of Tegel is not that people would wait here. The point of Tegel is that people would take all the way, or if the point, or Panko, Kirche, or U9 to Panko. These are parts of longer lines, so then the point about access time is less important. Now, while we're already in Spandau, let's discuss this part. Um, this is within the city. I think this might no, it's not the only place. So it's one of a few places where the S-Bahn does not go into the suburbs and stays in the city. Now, the history of this is that west, east, right? Because as soon as you're outside the city, you're in East Germany. The whole point is that West Berlin was not at the border. West Berlin was surrounded, and so the western neighborhoods had the Western S-Bahn. There's actually a really good YouTube video that I have just seen, uh, and now I can see all the video game music that I see. Berlin, yeah, this one the new lines are TBM. So the U5 expansion was done with the TBM because you would not do cut and cover underneath the river, nor would you do cut and cover. I mean, you could do cut and cover underneath Untitled Chapter, but they did it. So I recommend this video. It's the first of a two-parter. Um, but anyway, the point is that there was a Western S-Bahn and an Eastern S-Bahn, both run by the East, but they were separate, of course. So people would not be able to leave the communist utopia of the East to the capitalist rat race of the West, which meant that they were, because if you were not a communist, then it meant that you were insane, so you should be forcibly sent to a mental hospital. This was done all the time. So why would you get an exit visa? Um, but now that it's being connected, we can do this. This is already being planned, and I'm actually gonna show the Berlin S-Bahn plans because there's some good in there and some not so good. So Berlin S-Bahn, it's called I-2030, and this is a map that has expansions, some of which are good, some of which are not. So this is, it's going farther out. It's a Finkenkrug, not Falkensee. Okay, so let's a straight line, so we can just do this. No, we can't. This is slightly like this, so now we go up to, I guess here is Finkenkrug. Okay. And now stroke style. I think this is me just, yeah, okay, it's me just doing 128, but it's as opposed to an official color. So, color. I'm gonna put this in the it's happening style, and that's below the stops. Okay. And now, what are the stations gonna be for this? Are they going to actually say? Corridore. Okay. So you might know that there's still plans to keep going farther out to Nauen. And as I said, I'm not depicting the Regionalbahn in this map, but Oh, is it possible to, you mean build the U7 extension elevated? I guess, but I don't think it's actually being done. I think the plans are all for subways. Uh, oh, you mean for U5? Um, U5 could not have been done with cotton cover and a river bridge. River, there's not enough clearance. Um, like I mean, they use the correct construction technique for U5 most of the way, at least. It's expensive, but U5 is in the center of Berlin. Of course, it's expensive. It's like complaining that Marmaray is expensive, that it's a full, I think, 200, or I think Marmaray might have been $200 million a kilometer, or maybe slightly less than that, which is very high by Turkish standards because it's a complicated line. It just so happens that in Turkey, 200 million a kilometer in PPP terms is considered expensive. Okay, so Nauenstraße, which one is Nauenstraße? This feels like where the stop should be, but I don't think it is where it is planned to be. And there's also this branch, Segefelder Straße. Um, so I believe, right, so it's not here. So is it just going to be something like here? Nauenstraße? This is me showing how many times I've been to Spandau. Uh, but again, it's not me crowning. This is at this point me posting what is officially planned and endorsing official plans to expand the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn. So which one is Nauel? Nauenstraße? No, not this one. Oh, it is this one. Okay. The one near the Edeka. The other one becomes Zeppelinstraße. Zeppelinstraße. Yeah, that's what I realized too late. Thanks, Felix. Um, and now the other stops, Klotterbuchsweg. Is it this one? Yes. It is. Um, Albertshof. Who's gonna end up being here, give or take? Zegefeld, probably around here. Falkensee already exists as a Regionalbahn. And then Finkenkook. I think it's gonna end up here because this is where Finkenkook is. I'm not 100% sure. Um, and so let's also this. This is gonna be starting around here, and then you just go to Falkensee Chaussee. Now, this is a clever technique that I really appreciate that Berlin is doing, which is to use natural branching. Now, we're all Jarrett Walker filled here. We all know that there are problems with branching because branching cuts frequency. But what if you are you connect to a very busy place that requires very high frequency? Let's call this place Spandau, and then you have a tail where you can make do with less frequency. Let's call it Falkensee and Finkenkrug. Then you can short turn some trains, but if you have a place to park trains on a branch, might as well do that. So this is the technique that is being used here, and this is a very good idea. And so now I did not discuss the proposed act for any of this. So right now, as I said, going east-west, there's a 10-minute act for trains that turn at Westkreuz. I believe that's U5. So U5 not runs Westkreuz, I'm forgetting where half the trains turn, but half the trains go all the way to Strassberg. You have U7, which runs from so U7 and U75 are also city lines. So U7 runs Ahrensfelde to Potsdam every 10 minutes. Uh, so where's Potsdam? Here's Potsdam. So there are two ways to get to Vanden Potsdam. The way that is slower and goes into the north-south tunnel, and the way that is faster and goes into the Stadtbahn. So U7 takes us, not E7, S7 takes us. And then there is U7, not U, S75, which we're going to talk about in a little bit as service. This kind of loops around the outer ring, the line that was designed to bypass West Berlin. So it is so this is an orbital ring. It is in the suburbs in the west, but in the east it goes through the city. And the inner parts of it are being used for I keep saying for S75, which does not run into the Stadtbahn. It turns, I forget whether at the Warschauer Straße or Ostbahnhof, or maybe some trains at one, some at the other. And finally, you have U3 and U9. U3 is every 20 minutes from Erkner to Spandau. U9 every 20 minutes from the airport. Then it curves to the Stadtbahn and then also Spandau. Now, you might be asking me, hey, Alon, you're talking about a line that runs every 18 trains per hour, but you're telling me that some trains are turning without serving the line. What the hell? That is, in fact, a problem. So I don't want to abuse the term electronics before concrete, and the reason I don't want to abuse it is that in Switzerland, electronics before concrete, Elektronik vor Beton, means that you deal with the signaling first. You do signaling. You figure out how to run better schedules. You figure out how to make maximum use of the infrastructure you have, and only then do you build new tunnels or new tracks or new grade separations. In Germany, unfortunately, it's been abused as a slogan as kind of an adversarial technical advocacy or an adversarial engineering of people who are mostly being NIMBY against new tunnels. So Organisation for Elektronik for Beton in Germany is being used by activists in Munich who were opposed to the construction of the second S-Bahn tunnel. And you can even find some people who argue for very wrong sociological reasons that building more S-Bahn service to city center is bad because it means that there's going to be more jobs in city center and not in what they think are small towns where they belong, and it's actually just going to be job sprawly office parks, which is what happens in the United States when there isn't good enough service for city center by rail, and there's a lot of roads. So I want to caution and not call it exactly an Organisation for Elektronik for Beton situation, but they need to fix the signaling. So the trains here only do 18 trains an hour. Munich on the S-Bahn does 30. And it's not even that hard to get up to 24. 30 is a very weird It's a very weird and unusual implementation of the Linienzugbeeinfluencung, so LZB. It's not quite moving block signals, but it might as well be. The signals are about as long as the signal blocks are very short, about as long as a train. I think they might even be shorter than a train within the Munich tunnels. So it's effectively moving block signaling, rather like SACEM or SACEM, the system that is being used on the central parts of the RERA in Paris that was capable of 30 trains an hour. Until very recently when they clawed it back to 27 because of the bilevels and their inability to unload quickly. Thankfully, Berlin does not have that abomination on the S-Bahn. So so they should figure out ways to get from 18 to 24, even more trains an hour on this. And So the Falcons, so this is good. It's gonna mean ideally you probably want 24 trains, so a train every 2.5 minutes on the Stadtbahn, and then maybe every 5 minutes to Spandau, and if you can support every 5 minutes to Potsdam and do the, or to Vans to do that. If not, then every 10 minutes, and then keep the turns at Westkreuz. And so if it's every 5 minutes, then yeah, you can do every 10, or if you can do every 10 and then maybe a tail every 20 or something. If every 10 minutes is too much service for this, which I don't think it is. Um, so this is S7 going west, and so this is the corridor is called West. And so let's look at the so they are talking about the Siemensbahn. I may have missed some of the stops, so let's fix that because this is something that is definitely happening. Parts of it are already under construction. So Wernerwerk, Siemensstadt, and they keep expanding northwest more than I am. And I will talk a little bit about why it is important to expand as far as possible here. So this is Wernerwerk, and this is Siemensstadt. It's a weird thing where the curves here don't match the curves on other things. This is going to be Gartenfeld. Uh, which one is this? So there are multiple Bernauer Straßes in Berlin. This is a different Bernauer Straße from the famous one from the wall, which is this one. Um, Gartenfeld. And they're not really showing me the map, which is rather unfortunate. Um, but I'm gonna keep drawing this as expanding a little bit further, and you can see bits of the This is the annoying part. So so this is Siemens Dom. It's gonna be a station because you always have stations at intersection points. And then what? Siemens is gonna be here or something. Um, so this is going to be Gartenfeld. So even with das neue Gartenfeld, i.e. one that has nothing to do with the industrial heritage of the area, and is going to be mostly people with like my socioeconomic status. But I mean, people with my socioeconomic status live in the city and deserve to live here too. So, I'm not as populist about this as the anti-gentrification people. I just So it goes up to here maybe, Gartenfeld, and then Neues, and then Neues Gartenfeld, or das Neue Gartenfeld. Uh, Wernerwerk is just going to be U Siemens then? Okay. So there's not actually going to be a stop here? Okay, so this is Siemensstadt, this is, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. Um, yeah, okay, and something like this, but it's still missing one stop from here, and I can't tell whether I'm missing something or if they are, because it's just too low resolution. Oh, Mehlwiesen. Um, it's just not a very accurate pick, unfortunately, and they don't even have names for these, um, so I don't even know how much of this is how much of the outer part is happening versus just being crayon. Um, but I'm So to some extent, the dash versus dotted is going to be somewhat of a guess as to what is happening. But anyway, I will explain a little bit why it's important to milk this as far as possible, as I said. It's also going to be relevant for New Yorkers who are thinking about an extension of the N and W trains to LaGuardia Airport. It's on a rather similar principle. They will explain in a sec. So it's the Siemensbahn, so like rucksack. Dock. Um, okay, so more corridors. Um, okay, they're talking about some extensions of U2 to Felton. This is a rather weird, like, you're not a Bond extension, to be honest. Um, and now they're talking about kind of doing a loop-de-loop on S75. It's not amazing, but I can see where they're doing. And then also an express version of the line to Wannsee from the to Potsdam from the Nord-Süd tunnel. And this is where I'm starting to get skeptical. And here's the situation. So remember the Stadtbahn is the one that's more at capacity than the north-south tunnel, right? But so you probably want to load more traffic on the north-south tunnel, but there's still, as you can see, there's no capacity problem here. You see, there's lots of capacity problem going east, but going west, this line is spacious. So if you want to create more travel to Potsdam, there's already room for that. There's lots of room for that on the trains because remember, some of them already turn here. So the whole point is that you rebalance by doing by expanding as far in the opposite direction as possible. Doing TOD there if there's demand. I don't think there's that much demand for TOD in Brandenburg, but maybe in Spandau. Also, there's going to be more traffic going to Potsdam over time. Potsdam is basically Berlin at this point. So Potsdam is technically in Brandenburg, but for example, Potsdam, I think, actually returns a green member of the Bundestag. I think the Greens actually have a plurality in Potsdam, which is not a thing that ever happens in the East. I don't even think Leipzig and Dresden have green pluralities. These are maybe have a lot of SPD. They also have some green, but I think it's SPD, Die Linke, and some green, and then Saxony outside Dresden and Leipzig is CDU and AfD. And honestly, the CDU in Saxony is very AfD-light, unfortunately. But in Potsdam, it's very different. It's because it's a university town, very Berlin-like. You can kind of see the prepared right-of-way for an extension from Tilto, which is also very good. Um, so the project is like, okay. So this is not a terribly high ridership tail, but it's useful, so why not? And right. So red is for like United States, but the S1 is in green here. So this is 2 stops out of Teltow into. Let me see if they're actually going to do something Südwest here and not just. Oh, they are talking about this a little bit. Which is really weird. They're trying to add tracks here, and like the way they're planning to do this is we're going to get to S21 in a few minutes because this is not a very good project and it's thankfully salvageable. But only if they change plans completely from the plans that are currently under construction. So Rathaus Steglitz, Zehlendorf, so well past Zehlendorf, almost like this, Wannsee. So this is Wannsee. So it's not a very clear thing. Is it Standorf? Yeah, Standorf, Sputendorfer Straße. Okay, so here they're actually telling me where they're going, which is Isarstraße is Teltow Isarstraße, Teltow Isarstraße, and then the street, I think. You can't hear me? Shit. Okay, now I'm think the audio is back. Can you hear me, guys? Oh, by the way, thanks for the. Okay, but so past Gartenfeld, this looks like okay, it's geplante. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, great. Okay, yeah. Sometimes my audio randomly conks, and if I don't have my thing in front of me, then I can speak for minutes, and then nobody is hearing, which is rather awkward. So I think this is the correct right of way for this. Quellmatte. I hate the word quell nowadays. So for those of you, so those of you guys who don't know modern German, Querdenker is a word that means lateral thinker, or Querdenker means lateral thinking or thinking outside the box. It used to be a rather neutral term for kind of mode of thinking, and then in the last, I think, few months, maybe a little more than that, it became the standard self-ID for people who are corona denialists. So it's a combo of anti-vax and anti-mask. To the point that people talk about. So when you say something like there's a Querdenker protest, what you mean is there's a protest of people who are fighting against vaccination and against any kind of closures or mask mandates, and lets you think there's some kind of this is some kind of personal choice argument. I mean, I'm sure they think they're supporting personal choice, but the nurse who injected 8,500 patients with a saline placebo instead of with the vaccines that they wanted to get, that is not bodily autonomy. Somehow, like all the people, somehow in the same way that the sort of people who say we need to end cancel culture, all that they end up doing is just most of what they no, all of what they end up doing is just witch hunting and like trying to fire people who are too anti-racist. And you can even see some people say, "Oh, the cancel culture people must be made to suffer consequences or something." And it's the same here. So anyway, so anyway, that's the process. But no, that's not where the stop is. It's Sputendorf. So here, the center of Stahnsdorf. And so yeah, so this is the plan for the express train, which is not a good one. So this is where we're going to start talking about S21 because you can't avoid talking about S21. For example, parts of it are already under construction. So to get into let's get so before we get into let's talk about the current plans. I'm going to draw this in a little bit, and then but I'm actually going to talk about S21 first. 21, for people who don't know, is a common suffix, means 21st century. It's not related to S1 and S2, even though it is also going to connect maybe to S1 or S2. So Stuttgart 21, so the other S21, is kind of bringing Stuttgart to the 21st century by turning the station from a terminal to a through station. The S-Bahn already has a through station underground, so this is about the mainline station. There are plans for Munich 21, which are cancelled because Munich is at the southeast corner of the country, and Frankfurt 21, which were cancelled and then revived with a different name. Frankfurt is also a terminal station. It is in a very central location, and it forces trains to back in and out to the point that quite a lot of through trains just skip it entirely and only serve the airport, or they only serve Frankfurt Süd. And the trains that do turn at Frankfurt do it in 4 minutes because it's that important to get in and out fast, but it's still an inefficiency. So S21 Berlin is not about that because we already have Hauptbahnhof. Hauptbahnhof, in fact, was built in the 2000s with 4 north-south tracks. Refer again to the rail traffic map. So this is 2 tracks of the Stadtbahn for S-Bahn. There are also 2 tracks for Regionalbahn, which are not being used for any kind of urban service. So what I mean is there are about 6 trains an hour on the Regionalbahn that use the Stadtbahn, but they are not trying to set up a regular train every 10 minutes, unfortunately. This is a bad thing because this is a crowded line. So in addition to fixing the signaling so that more trains can run, they should also use the express tracks for regional travel. Now, there are intercity trains that use that as well. So you can't do every 5 minutes because the intercity trains don't make the same stops as the regionals. The regionals make half of these stops. So there are on the it's not named after the planned opening date. No, none of this is going to open 2021, although I'm sure that sometime 10 years ago, people thought this might open 2021. So these are all the stops on the Stadtbahn. On the S-Bahn, the Regionalbahn makes half of these. The intercities so the intercities used to stop at Charlottenburg and so, but they no longer do. They stop at Hauptbahnhof and Ostbahnhof, and then go their merry way to the rail yards here. This is the way they stop at Ostbahnhof and not Ostkreuz. Partly it's historic because Ostbahnhof was the Hauptbahnhof of the East, but also Ostbahnhof has more tracks and yard access. Now, you could still, I think, run an intercity every 10 minutes. It's not a fast line. Most of it is like a 50 or 60 kilometer an hour line. Look how curvy it is. It's from the 19th century. And this is not 50 kilometers an hour. That actually could be 100 if they ran at modern curve speed. Now, at modern curve speed, this is about 60. It's a very curvy line, way curvier than all the things in the United States where people think that they can only do 30 miles an hour and they can do almost twice that speed. So the intercities probably can slot behind a regional every 10 minutes, but it's not being set up this way. And also importantly, the intercities should probably not be running on the Stadtbahn, to be honest. They should probably be going like this. And I know that, for example, the trains to Köln do this, but there are plans to move them to this, which is faster for the Deutschlandtag, and this should be done for more trains. I mean, there's no high-speed train that needs to use the Stadtbahn. The high-speed trains can just do this. So please do that. Remember, there are 4 north-south tracks here already. And I believe there are only 6 trains an hour on these 4 north-south tracks. Actually, no. Actually, there might be more. There might be there might be 6. No, there are 6 regionals, I think, maybe some more intercities, but not many intercities. So it fits very easily in 4 tracks. And remember, the S-Bahn is not terribly at capacity here, but they're still building a 5th and 6th track to essentially build more north-south S-Bahn to Hauptbahnhof and not just Friedrichstraße. The plan is to keep going north-south, so Hauptbahnhof, Potsdamer Platz. I don't think is there an S21? I hope there's S21 here, so they're showing Old-West, Nauen, Nord, Südost, Süd, Südwest, S1 S-Bahn. I know that there used to be an S21 here, I just can't find it. But the plan, at any rate, I can just explain to you what it does. So, within Berlin, we only have one place where 2 trains cross without a transfer. So this is a near stop because if Hansaplatz, so Hansaplatz is kind of on the on the crossing, and if it is deemed to be on the other side of the crossing, then they do cross because then the next stop would be Zoologischer Garten, and they do stop there. So the only place, so Berlin, every 2 S-Bahn lines and cross, so that's be just the various Kreuzes and Friedrichstraße, and whenever 2 U-Bahn lines cross, there's a transfer. And also whenever an U-Bahn line and an S-Bahn line cross, there's a transfer with one exception. And the exception is here. So when they built the north-south tunnel, they still had a lot of historic terminals like Anhalter Bahnhof. So instead of trying to string this kind of RER style to the U-Bahn connection point, which in this case would be Gleisdreieck, they went nonstop from Yorkstraße to Anhalter Bahnhof without stopping at the intersection with U1. Now, when U7 was expanded, one of the reasons U7 is so weird and squiggly is that they made an effort to connect it to the S-Bahn at Yorkstraße, so that people from these suburbs would connect from the S-Bahn to U7. Because remember, this was all in the east, and these others were in the west. So, yeah, no. When I came to Berlin from Köln, we used the Stadtbahn. And actually, I mean, purely selfishly, I hope that I can use the Stadtbahn more because I live closer to Ostbahnhof than to Hauptbahnhof. I actually live very close to Ostbahnhof. But I mean, it's not about my personal convenience, and honestly, I can just take the S-Bahn to I can take the S-Bahn to Hauptbahnhof without a problem. So the point is, S21 is going to go Hauptbahnhof, Potsdamer Platz, which is kind of the main city center stop. So, for example, the actual skyscrapers that they're building, so Sony Center is built here. But it's really an entire, I guess, ellipsoid of CBD from Alexanderplatz to Potsdamer Platz. And then with a stop at Gleisdreieck to fix the historic error, and then go to these lines, north-south. And you can kind of see, let me see if I can show the corridor. Berliner S-Bahn. And yeah, you see that this is going north-south, and then just connecting to the existing lines. But remember, the existing lines are not at capacity. Moreover, how much traffic is there? 18 trains an hour. The way it works is 6 trains per hour on S1 to Wannsee, which is permanently paired with Book. 6 trains per hour. And this is 12, so 6 on S2 and 6 on S25 and S26. So 3 each. And these go to these other branches. Now, these have about equal traffic, so you don't want to do 6 and 12, you want to do 12 and 12, and you want to make sure, as always, to get the electronics right. Remember that Berlin S-Bahn has effectively no track sharing with anything that is not the Berlin S-Bahn. There's a little bit of that at the southeastern margin. They might do some for this project with Falkensee, but there's very little. So this is a very self-contained system by S-Bahn standards. So they can run 24 trains an hour and then do 6, 6, and then 12. And then just run more service here. They don't need S21 for that. So where should they do S21? Well, look here. We have a rather busy line going from the southeast toward not quite city center, because the historic terminal of this railway, this is not a, this by the way is just more traffic being diverted into here and here. This is not a glitch in the graphic. This is fully intended, this difference in width. And well, look, these are the busiest parts, because it's where the this line going southeast, called the Görlitzer. This is where it meets the rest of the system. And what it does right now is it does something that I really hate. Let me just read this. Yeah, Germany. Yeah, the capital gets more funding than other places. I mean, yeah, but I mean, they're doing right now the Frankfurt 21. I mean, not by that name. Yeah, Hamburg is also doing a lot of construction, and Hamburg used to have the lowest construction costs in Germany, and now it has the highest. Yeah, it's mostly a whole underestimation. Like the Ruhr is not growing as fast as the other regions, and I think its growth is also being underrated. Like I think people underrate how, like, for example, international Köln is. Like my understanding is that Köln is maybe almost as Anglophone as Berlin or Frankfurt. So but it doesn't have that reputation. And I'm pretty sure that if you ask most people which city is wealthier, Berlin or Köln, outside Germany, they'll just say Berlin, obviously. And we in Germany know it's the other way around. In Germany, Berlin is still somewhat eastern. I mean, is Köln as wealthy as Munich and Frankfurt? No, but it's wealthier than Berlin. Anyway, it's a typical stop spacing on suburban S-Bahns. It really depends. So our S-Bahn in Berlin is very unusually urban, and it's also true of Hamburg. In Hamburg, they barely leave city limits, in Berlin also. So on the Stadtbahn, it's maybe every kilometer and a bit, not a beat and a bit. On the ring, a little more, maybe every kilometer and a half. In the suburbs, you can look. This is, I mean, I'm gonna look at stretches because it's not maybe that interesting to try to do averages with it. So this, for example, is a stretch with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stops in a little more than 10 kilometers. This is in the outer city, not in the suburbs. So this is, I guess, 1.7. And then to Oranienburg, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and about 14 kilometers, so it spreads to about 3 kilometers. This, by the way, is much tighter than on the RER, where within the city they're like this. Or S2 to Bernau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 16 kilometers. So yeah, about 2 kilometers, a little more. Wait, wrong. 8 and 17. So this is the starting. Does that answer your question? Yeah, and again, and yeah. So Köln is the one that I'm least familiar with because Köln's S-Bahn is probably the most Regionalbahn-y, like the most Zurich-like in how interconnected it is, and the least urban in terms of how, like, basically an U-Bahn it is. Okay, so anyway, S20, I was starting to say there's something that I'm criticizing where the Görlitzer doesn't, so the Görlitzer does not have its own way into city center, so it does something called reverse branching. Reverse branching is, so normal branching is when you have a line like uh, the Stadtbahn in city center branching to many branches, to 2 branches right now in the west, and they're planning on adding a branch, and 2 more branches in the east. So one that's S75, 2 S7, 3 S5, 4 S3, and this S9 S1. Reverse branching is when you have a line in the suburbs that branches in city center. So we have the Görlitzer here, plus its branch, and then let's look at what happens in city center. Some trains, so these, some trains to the airport and some trains that go on the main line. These are S45, 46, 47. They go to the southern part of the ring. Some turn at Hellmannstrasse. One of them, I think, turns at Hellmannstrasse, one at Südkreuz, and I think one more around Westend. But I never remember which is which. And it's every 20 minutes each. But I don't think they overlap to be very neatly every 6 minutes, every 6 minutes, 40 seconds. Then you have S8 and S85. These use the eastern part of the ring. So they go like this. And then they go to north-south lines. These are artifacts of the Cold War. These did not actually exist as services before the Cold War because then obviously everything that could go to city center did. It's just that while city center was in the east, Gesundbrunnen was in the west. So the trains would divert like this. And then, yeah, they went to Alexanderplatz and Friedrichstrasse, but some trains just skipped because of capacity and just connected to suburbs directly. And then they would stop at Ostkreuz. And so this is being retained. So there's 2 services each every 20 minutes that do this. And then there's S9, which is every 20 minutes from the airport to this curve to the Stadtbahn. This is very confusing. This is also not very good planning because I live around Ostbahnhof, so for me to go to the airport, it's a 20-minute frequency, but the trains actually get to the airport every 10 minutes, just that I need to know in advance. Do we go to Ostbahnhof and take S9, or do I take U8 from Heinrich-Heine, from Hellmannstrasse, and then switch from Hellmannstrasse to the airport? Now, if I'm going back from the airport home, I can take wherever, but if I'm going to the airport, I need to make a decision, and that's hard. And the worst thing about it, usually people are more stressed for time going to the airport than going back from the airport. So the take whatever is something that should be my option going to the airport, not from, and yet it is not available. So what they should be doing is avoiding this kind of interlining. Now in New York, there's severe interlining on the subway, and interlining reduces your capacity. Now this is not why they think they can only do 18 trains per hour, because there's no such thing, or almost no such thing on the north-south system. And even on the Stadtbahn system, there's very little, only S9. And if they really cared, S9 would be the one just turning it Ostbahnhof, and then S3 perhaps would go to, not S3, one of the S75s would go to Spandau. But or actually S5 because S5 because S5 I think also has some trains that turn also at Ostbahnhof and not, for extra service. Um, so what they should be doing is turning this into a third S-Bahn park because again, remember they're already building this north-south tunnel where there's no capacity need for it. To Potsdamer Platz. So build to Hauptbahnhof and Potsdamer Platz, but then don't go direct south. So this is me slightly crowning this. This is just me proposing kind of a fix to the north-south system to kind of divert it from Anhalter Bahnhof to Gleiselberg. This might be a little too fanciful, so let's kill that. And leave this annoying lack of transfer. And instead, they're instead build it as a northwest to southeast third trunk line. Now, I'm drawing one option for this trunk line, and I do want to make it very clear there's an option for a third one, which I'm actually going to show you from Berlin Center, which is this map, but it's just the central parts. No, Berlin Center is already going to do Berlin Center, not Berlin Center 2, but the original Berlin Center, I guess. Okay, yeah, so two options are given here. In a map that, again, it's the same as this one, except that this map is only the ring and not the entire region. So build a curve here, that's gonna be annoying, because there are things in the way. Then as soon as you can, tunnel from here from Zonenallee. So you tunnel under Zonenallee. You serve Hermannplatz. You stay on Ulbanstrasse, and then you hit Halleschestor, and then you can serve Anhalter Bahnhof. And so Anhalter Bahnhof becomes a stop only on the Görlitzer and then you divert the main north-south to Gleisdreieck. But again, this is kind of fanciful, mostly because of this curve. So there are two. So again, these are two options: this option and this option. And my understanding is that there's actually ongoing technical advocacy in the city, and not just from Felix, to build this. Just because the historic Görlitzer went here, the park here, it's called Görlitzer Park, was the rail yards of the train station, which were removed and replaced with a park. And so the idea of doing this instead of this is that this just hits better, and also importantly, the entry into city center is going to be Moritzplatz is not that important. It's not that interesting, to be honest. But then you're hitting Checkpoint Charlie before you're hitting Potsdamer Platz, and Checkpoint Charlie is basically part of the central business district. So Checkpoint Charlie, so it's called Checkpoint Charlie because if you were non-German, so if you were an Allied soldier going into Berlin, there was a specific highway from Hanover to Berlin. So at the inner German border, east of Hanover, this was called Checkpoint Alpha, and then entering the city, it was Checkpoint Bravo. And you can even see the remains of Checkpoint Bravo here. You can see how big this service zone is on a freeway, which, yeah, sure, but it's an urban freeway. Why do you need this? And the reason is that this used to be checkpoints for people crossing back from East Germany to West Berlin. And then entering from West Berlin to East Berlin, the third checkpoint Charlie, it's this one. There were other checkpoints for German citizens, for West German citizens crossing in between. And so checkpoint Charlie is the border between Kreuzberg and Mitte. Now, I mentioned before that there was a rather seedy reputation, and unfortunately there still is, undeservedly, I believe, to Cottbus. But it's kind of the farther out parts of Kreuzberg. The inner parts of Kreuzberg are basically the CBD. So Mellingdam is where I go by science fiction. And and Checkpoint Charlie, I've been there. I've literally been to a queer meetup right in this area, in a bar that, other than our meetup, would mostly host corporate things and have and there's a co-working space in the back, and there's a thing written on the wall, something like something like, I think, collaborate, co-innovate. So Checkpoint Charlie is basically an extension of the CBD at this point, of city center. I don't think this is as true of Anhalter Bahnhof. Uh, yeah, and you can do yes, you can do things like Hermannplatz to Treptow, and that would run roughly from here to here. It's just that I think this is easier because this would be above ground, and then you would transition to underground around here. Um, you would need to fight people over how much you're allowed to go elevated in the park, because ideally you want to clear the canal first. But yes, you could also do a TPM and then do this option. It's just that there's a good reason to stay on the northern route, not because of Moritzplatz. Again, I've been to Moritzplatz many times. It's random neighborhood. It's mostly about Checkpoint Charlie. And as a result, in my current version of the crayon, I'm doing this option. And not just because it's the one that's being proposed by other people in the city. So I don't know if this station is being proposed, like kind of, so this would be something like Treptow-Kreuz. I think that this might be maybe the second longest interstation on the ring today, after this one, where it's just Tempelhof. And obviously, if this is ever redeveloped, there's going to be, actually, here's what I'm going to do, because I believe in YIMBYism and I believe in redevelopment. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to put stakes in the ground and say that there should be an S-Bahn stop serving the new development on the ring. This. So let's add that to our crayon. And so we do this, and then we run. So this might still exist as a shuttle. So I'm not killing this segment, but it might exist. So this might exist as a separate shuttle if there's space for it. And I don't think there is. I don't think there are extra tracks on the ring. So either build pocket tracks around here, or just let the station go. Not many people use it, to be honest. And then we can kill this curve, the U9 curve, not the U9, the S9 curve, applies, and Ostkreuz, and so everything here goes to Ostkreuz. And then the equivalent of U9, U8, U85, S45, S46, and 47 would just be, I guess, trunk line of maybe 18 trains an hour. And then, and again, maybe this is separate, maybe not. And then let's say a train every 10 minutes with the airport, a train every 10 minutes on the main line, and then maybe only a train every 20 minutes stop. Or maybe not. I mean, today this has, I think, maybe 3 services and not 2. So, because maybe if it's 231, you don't want to do 222, you might want to do 24. So maybe a train every 10 minutes all the way to the end, and a train every 10 minutes turning somewhere in the middle. Let's take Soitan. Not Eichwald. Soitan here. And then this might be part of the shuttle, but because again, this is a very weak branch. And then they would just go here. And the point is, because there's so much ridership southeast, you want to spam as much stuff connecting it. So you want to have as much Siemensbahn as possible. So let's go back and draw some Siemensbahn. So remember, Siemensbahn goes up until here. So till here. The stuff that's currently that's actually happening. And we're going to draw the extension of the Siemens S-Bahn that is said to be under planning. Yeah. It's not that I'm not subject to German Protect Tempelhof Greenfield Twitter. I am, however, as I said, I socialize either with gamers or with queers. The gamers, a group that is majority immigrant, with pretty modern views of the city. I mean, I randomly meet people who tell me that they wish the city were better digital, but also didn't have the homophobia of CDU or the we love cars part of FDP. And FDP is also unfortunately kind of a failed nectar party as well. And then I go to the queer meetups in which people think that Tempelhof development is banned because it might be market rate housing, and market rate housing is evil and raises rents. Like these are, and by the way, these are not anti-gentrification sociologists. I mean, they read the anti-gentrification sociology, but they're not. But they're usually people who have very anti-gentrification, anti-development views. But for example, you can't have a political discussion with them about, and I don't just mean about old left issues, but even about middle left ones. I mean, you talk to them about racism, and they are often rather, and they're often rather uncomfortable. And so yeah, I'm familiar with these people. I won't say I have drinks with them, but I don't drink. But if I did drink, I would have drinks with them. And now we can keep going on and what the yeah, it's this one. So okay, so you just go northwest to Hohenfelde, Raabstraße. Yes, I'm familiar, and yes, I'm aware that I'm doing something rather weird with my constant toggling between different software. So okay, stop here, stop here. Oh, and there's going to be something on the bridge, and I guess they want this to be a tunnel. Yeah, okay, I can dig. And then go kind of close to Neustadt, no, to Neustadt, not Neustadt, to Schwanda. I'm going Schwanda, Neustadt. So do this, and then they want stop somewhere here, which is kind of a bad location, I think. I mean, you probably want better connection to the street network, so you probably want it to be here, maybe. If it's going to be underground anyway. Siemens-Bahn in Haveltunnel. Haveltunnel, not Haveltunnel. So I'm gonna draw it. So I'm gonna. But the thing is, on the other hand, this is a this is a park. This is a good thing because while this might be bored, stations are built cut and cover. It is really important for construction cost minimization to build stations cut and cover. And this means you need space for the cut and cover, which can be in the middle of the street. So you can, for example, do it, open up a Straße. But often what is being done is you do off-street locations. In Singapore, it's actually being done at very high cost because, for example, they actually demolish property for that, negating the cost benefit of that. For Singapore is a high-cost country. But in Istanbul, they find parks for this, and it's harder to use state owned parks. They have to use municipal parks now that the state is making it harder for them to build for political reasons because Istanbul a few years ago voted for an opposition mayor who's gonna run against Erdogan for president. And so Erdogan is trying to prevent him from getting wins, but he's getting wins. So this is a good location. Killing the parking lot here is a good location. So this is not stupid ideas. Although again, I do think that this would be a better location. I mean, you can see here it has to be redevelopment. Here you can use the existing housing projects to feed a station. Then you can do redevelopment here maybe. So I'm actually gonna draw it my way and not their way. So like this. But their option, again, I think it's bad because their option does not have as much street connectivity, but it's not a bad option, and I think that on constructability, they're not bad. I just want to highlight that if it's something that's being only proposed, then I don't see myself bound by existing plans. So you build here, you build on this island, and then you build here. Okay, so the idea of doing this as much as possible is to load balance from the southeast, because the southeast has a lot of, where am I going? The southeast has a lot of traffic. Look here. But it's not balanced by anything northwest. I mean, you can even see here there's more to the east than to the west. So you want to create as much traffic going west. And this is, as I said, it's also relevant for New Yorkers, because if New York ever de-interlines, and it is going to need to, the New York is going to need to create more traffic fitting the Astoria line. And this means extending the Astoria lines with the NW trains probably to LaGuardia. This is a good thing. And so likewise, going northwest here with the S-Bahn is a very good idea. It creates more traffic, balancing this. Because what doesn't balance, so if this is only a 10-minute train, then you're going to have 2 more 10-minute trains going somewhere else. Either doing something pleb like turning here or even here, or just going here. And ideally, you probably want at least a turn every 10 minutes, going to Gesundbrunnen from Hauptbahnhof, maybe even every 5. So yeah, you can do, so certainly if you do a train every 5 minutes on the Galitzbahn somehow, then it's 5 minutes to Gesundbrunnen, and then north of the Gesundbrunnen to whatever, there are many tracks there, and then every 5 minutes here. If it's only 12 trains per hour, which is weird, then it's done. Otherwise, you can't even, I mean, I guess you can plausibly try to do a recombination that's 7.5, but most stuff here is every 10 or every 5, so maybe 7.5 wouldn't fit with connections if there are any that are timed. So you might want to do 5, 10, and I guess you can see 10, 5, or 10, 10, 10, just that way. Another question is what happens north, because this means that all these lines, S8, S85, have nowhere to go. But that's fine, because remember, we're doing 24 trains per hour on this by improving the electronics. So Wannsee would get a train every 5 minutes. Südkreuz a train every 5 minutes, which already it has, and then 10 is today. And then what to do here? I mean, I don't think Oranienburg needs a train every 5 minutes, I guess, but this is so weak. The way it works, this is 20 minutes. And this is, you can see how weak this is this line. So you might want to do something like, I don't know, maybe 5, and then this is 20, and then this is alternating 5 and 10, like 5, 5, 10 or something. I don't know. That would be rather weird, but I can see that. And then this would be 10 minutes. I'm not sure. And then whatever you do with this, you might even turn to do a forced transfer. Now there are plans to take this and turn this into a connection. And this might even take over, which is actually fine. To call this Karlsruhe. They're not showing this as connecting, but it is connecting. So then I'm going to do Corridore again. Yeah, I should actually click Corridor instead of assuming that I clicked Corridor. Yeah, so you see that there's a plan to do this and build this Karlsruhe station. This is not a terrible idea. But it mostly exists to get the weak line out of everyone's way. Could you do this as kind of an outer ring? You could, but the ridership would rather suck because it's too far out, there's not enough density. So if there's not enough density, you can't really fill a train every 5. You definitely can't fill a train every 5 minutes. Every 10, maybe. And if you do every 20, then all the crossings need to be timed, and that is going to be too difficult. No, we're not going to randomly move this. So as far as the S-Bahn goes, with the removal of S9 also, the S-Bahn's going to have S3, S5, S7, S75. Now, Felix had this plan to do, I think, 10 minutes each and all going to the Stadtbahn, which you can see. This is kind of weird still because Lichtenberg here gets this weird thing that it's a train every 2.5 minutes, but then one in four trains is missing. But that's okay. And so that is an option, just not having trains turn at Warschauer Straße or Ostbahnhof anymore, just to keep going. Other things that are maybe I don't know, like even like spamming more service on S3 might be a viable option, but honestly, S3 is not that busy a line. This is why it only has a train every 20 minutes or so. But it is, but you kind of see this is not a weak line by any means. So yeah, so it's gonna be 10, 10, 10, 10 with the understanding that this is the weakest. So we do the, so let's start to create the call of a voice situation, and also this requires us to do something very strange, which is kill these two, and hope that people understand what I'm doing here, which is this. Um, so color this correctly, and then and, and I'm gonna put it into geplant, not in bow. Then new U-Bahn start, first man startet Kurve, mit Kurvekreuz. And then what is it? Selheimbrücke and Malchow Nord. Okay. Selheimbrücke and Malchow Nord. So yeah, this would be so this is Malchow, so this is Malchow Nord. So sorry, this is me trying to put the station signs on top of it. Okay, so this would be Malchow Nord. And the bridge, I imagine, is this. And then we're just connecting, and then we're essentially just running a line. I'm guessing this is just going to be every 20 minutes, and then every 10 minutes from Vattenfall. Vattenfall. So let's see. So there's this option. Let's extend from Hennigsdorf to Felten. And that's going to be the S-Bahn expansion. Again, I don't think that the express thing to the express idea to Vanze, at least not from that, is good because there's already an express to Vanze. Just use better electronics to create more capacity on the Stadtbahn, and remember that that going west, even today, there's no capacity current from the Stadtbahn. Do this, and then Felten. Okay, so green strokes out. Plant. Oh shit, this is not going all the way. So what are the plant stops? Hennigsdorf, Nord, and Felten. It's not a very busy line. You can kind of see it's already becoming kind of rural. here. Here's better. And yeah, this is the S-Bahn as it should be. And again, I'm basing these partly on existing expansion plans, but I also don't think they're all correct. So yeah, this is for the future S-Bahn. Oh, right, finally, there's from Blankenfeld, they have these plans to go to Rangsdorf. So here's a really important plan that is not an S-Bahn expansion plan, it's still a really important rail plan on this line. This is a two-track line, because this used to be four tracks going from Berlin to Dresden, but as war operations, two of the tracks were removed, so it was only a western S-Bahn line. Trains from Dresden would divert to the outer ring. So, today, because there are only two tracks in their S-Bahn, and they run a train every 10 minutes, so there's no room for intercity trains from Dresden do this weird diversion from this line, which costs 20 minutes. So they're spending a fair amount of money on making this four tracks. So this should also include double Autobahn, of course, not just and not just S-Bahn. And sorry, not just intercities. It's kind of close to Hausa. This might actually bleed a little bit south of the boundary of the map. Yeah, this looks like I'm gonna need to do. You see the kind of where the stop wants to be is here basically. So I might need to later add another row to this map. I'm not gonna do it now because the code is slow. Read. This is not because I write bad code, although I do write bad code. It's because I am grabbing things from OpenStreetMaps, and OpenStreetMaps throttles uh, it throttles automated requests because of spam. How many stops are we talking about? Dalevitz, Rolls-Royce, and Longstaff. Okay. And because CDU loves its park and rides, this I guess is the Rolls-Royce park and ride. And this is a stop that's a fake location. It's actually going to be farther south. I'm just drawing it here to avoid bleeding down. This is like literally one pixel above. Sorry, sometimes I'm OCD when I write numbers like this. This is the S-Bahn. Now, I said it's going to be U and S-Bahn expansion, and of course these are part of a single system. So let's talk about the U-Bahn a little bit more. So the U-Bahn has time transfers with the S-Bahn, so this stop, Voltal, actually has a train every 10 minutes on the Stale and a train every 10 minutes on the S-Bahn. And they actually have timed cross-platform transfers in the same direction, which is really nice. The so let's talk about expanding this a little bit. And I know this is something that Felix sent me a lot of ideas about. So there's kind of like the core things. This would be the U7 expansion in both directions. It's kind of weird. U7 is the longest line. It's also kind of the weirdest alignment. I'm not drawing stops for this, which I mostly held off on because I didn't want to draw wrong stops, but because it's clearly up in the air, I'm just gonna start drawing stops. So, but not before U7, so then, no. Yeah, and here they're even saying happiness in Spandau and Neukölln, but not in Leimixdorf, which I don't care what they think. Unfortunately, um, this might also kill the problems. This might also kill U8 is the big problem, which is a bad one. So I don't want the Stock, and I want to look at the. Maybe they have this, and if not, then let's look at. Okay, and do you have maps of the expansion Wikipedia? No, you don't. Maybe you have in German. Yeah, you do. But you're not telling me much about this stuff. Okay, so there's Rudo Süd. So let's do that. Which I guess is here. Note that I'm doing just one alignment possible. There are a bunch. For some reason they want to do Rudo Süd off the road, like where it's hardest to build a station. Just very strange. They're doing. It's this good idea that's somehow being killed by that. I guess here maybe this is not a bad idea for a station, but why not here? This is just a wide road. You could close 4 lanes of this. Nobody's gonna notice. I mean, drivers are gonna notice, but who cares? I mean, the drivers want me to care what they think. CDU should have been less homophobic, and FDP should have been less on denialist. Like there are driver interest parties here. They suck, so we don't care what they think. I mean, I guess there's high density stuff here. Maybe is the idea. I guess. And I guess yeah, the problem is Europe doesn't do redevelopment. It's a real problem with European NIMBYism. It's all about finding brownfield sites like oversized parks, rail yards, shuttered factories. It's never going to be taking these little buildings and saying that it is legal for the homeowner to sell to Deutsche Wohnen to turn into a beautiful condo. Now, bearing in mind that it's not guaranteed that Deutsche Wohnen is going to exist 2 months from now, the polls on the Deutsche Wohnen und Co. enteignen poll, referendum, the polls are dead even. SPD is split on it. I mean, the party is against, Jusos is for, the Greens and Die Linke are for, the right is of course against. I mean, I'm voting no on this, but I'm also not seeing any no signs. I guess people are just, and it's not because I live in a very left-wing region, although I do, because I'm constantly seeing non-left-wing signs. I guess it's just a lie down and pretend it doesn't exist no campaign, but at any rate, with or without David, they're not going to turn these into bigger buildings. They're going to, bigger buildings come from, I mean, this empty lot could be a big building. But they're never going to redevelop small residential buildings, and I don't just mean small mid-rise. I mean, or missing middle. I mean like single family is not getting redeveloped. There's in Berlin, single family housing with gardens in shockingly central locations. Not Mitte or anything, but right here, Westland. It's a cemetery, but here. I was actually shocked when I walked. I think at one point I walked to a Mongolian grill around here, which I got a tip on, and turns out to not be very good. And I was shocked at seeing this. It's outside the ring, but just outside the ring. Or not just outside the ring, but also on top of the S-Bahn, this Bornholmerstraße. The reason, by the way, if you're wondering, is that there was this east-west situation. So the video that I linked earlier explains. So the east-west boundary here was rather weird. I think one of these stations was technically on the east side, but was better connected with the west. So I think this was Bornholm. So it was used as a Western S-Bahn station for Western use, and they built the Berlin Wall around it. So even though it was in the east, it was on the West Berlin side of the wall. Actually, in general, they built both the inner German border and the Berlin Wall slightly slightly farther in from the from the actual border, so that they would technically have legal jurisdiction on both sides, so that if a dissident ever came to spray graffiti on the wall, and this is so if it's a Westerner, they couldn't do anything, but if it was an Easterner who escaped to the West, they could arrest this person. This was done sometimes. So I think because of that, this is an underdeveloped area. But please be like this, be like this, be like this. Don't be like this. But it's not. But again, European YIMBYism doesn't think this way. I mean, maybe a little bit in Stockholm, but there's no YIMBY movement, so to speak, in Berlin. So the redevelopment they're doing is empty. It's stuff like this, not realizing that maybe this, that maybe these buildings could be bigger, or that this could have a big box store still in the basement, but then have a 30-story residential / commercial tower on top of it. It's not how people think here, unfortunately. So, what about form compliant? German NIMBYs, German NIMBYs are not especially aesthetic based. So yeah, people think, so yes, they also separately think that new buildings are ugly, but it's not because, but they're not saying, oh, I would support it if it looked like a traditional mid-rise building. Remember, we don't have setbacks here traditionally in Berlin. No, they're just against housing. They think that building more housing will bring in gentrifiers, rather than the correct thing, which is that we're coming anyway. I mean, I live in a new building. If I didn't, I would be gentrifying an area out of a building from the 1920s. Yeah, they dislike the investors. There's kind of a weird transatlantic thing where my joke is that Leninism and like Lenin's era was about liquidating the petite bourgeoisie because the big investor class could just abscond, and Leninism today is about liquidating everyone except the petite bourgeoisie. So the idea is that if you're a landlord who develops nothing but just inherited your 3 apartments forever and just squat in them and rent them out, then you're okay. Whereas if you're a big developer landlord, so someone actually creates new housing like Deutsche Wohnen, then you're bad. This is the mentality here. You can see glimpses of it in the United States too, with a lot of antitrust in which people are taking antitrust in very extreme directions and being against bigness as opposed to just against monopolies, or against labor monopolies, and and talk about how small business is more kind of moral or something than big business, and how it needs to support small business, which always means taking some landscaping business in the like in a rural area where they only ever get work because they know the state legislator, and if you're getting landscaping, obviously it would go to the one who's connected to the state legislator if you ever want the state to care about what you do. So there's kind of idea of the petite bourgeoisie is inherently moral to the self-ID'd left and far left. And so no, it's not about us. So yes, in the U.S. they lie and pretend that they care about aesthetics. Here they don't. Here they don't even bother. So at any rate, my point is that it's gonna be hard maybe to do this. So actually, maybe this is a better idea. I mean, let me move this a little bit to be more correct for the curve. But yeah. And yes, when I draw at this detail, I'm that careful about being geographically correct, and people have complained. But when you crayon, you need to crayon accurately, I think. This is, oh, I went too far. So this is here, it's Ludozit. What's the stop spacing on this? There might be, yeah, this is wide. This is 1.5 km. There might even be room for one more stop. Because it's not going to be the express into the airport. The whole point is there's the S-Bahn for that. And there's Schönefeld. I mean, maybe you want to do a development zone here, but only if you really want. and then what does it have here? Yeah, see, Berlin, Schönefeld, and then I guess they want to do this and not this. Um, I don't know what they're planning to do. I don't think they know what they're planning to do. And yeah, there might be a development zone here, which is so weird. I mean, if they're doing that, yeah, please also serve the neighborhood. Please also do that, maybe. So something here maybe. Then if there's a development zone here, and then here you're on airport ground, so it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think there should be another step. This is where we're adding stations. Now, as I said, there's the Mexico Pass extension. U9 doesn't really need this extension. So this is rather busy, but the whole point is that with better electronics, you can just buff frequency on this. So from 10 minutes to 5. There's already a really busy bus here. This is one of the busiest buses in Berlin. This is why the Greens want this to be a tram, even though it's right next to the S-Bahn. But just to create capacity with the S-Bahn, and yeah, it sucks for the connection to U1. But what is the connection to U1 for? If you're trying to use it to get to City West, you already have U9. If you're trying to use it to get to this part of the city, yeah, you're screwed on Cottbus, but eventually, if this is built, you can get near using a little bit of backtracking, and using U7, you can also get to Hellmannplatz. So this is a bad miss. Don't get me wrong, but the reason I dropped the dotted line that kind of fixes the mess is that the more lines you build, the more you can go around. Because remember, U1 is not, it's not like U1 is a long tail. So I'm proposing some extensions of U1 here. So going west, this was, I think, studied at one point for the 2030 horizon and then rejected or not acted on. This is going to Westkreuz. Essentially, it's turning U1 to a Westkreuz Oscar sign. So, and then maybe here, this was also studied, and this is a rather weird thing. I mean, what you could do is also send U1 north. Which is going to look really awkward eventually because, okay, so you're going to Frankfurt Auto, and then from there you go where? This is, I know, again, something I know that Felix has strong opinions over, I think, doing this. But as soon as you're outside city center, you want to go to city center and not to Cottbus Auto. Cottbus Auto, again, it's a cool neighborhood. But it's a residential and maybe neighborhood commercial center. It is not like it's a retail center, for example. And even then, I think it's a less specialized retail center than I think Bellingham. And this is very much not this part of Kreuzberg, which is just an extension of Mitte and has citywide destinations. Like the Jewish Museum is here. And the museums generally get placed in or near city center. Like a lot of them are here. It's called, this is the wrong location. This is the right location. This is called the Museum instead. Because there are so many museums on this island. Again, this is an option I'm not sure about. This is better, I think. Just because of the connection from Westkreuz to this part of Kofeld. So this runs under Kofeld, which again, it's not nothing. And especially it's good for the connection to U7. If you're going to U7, might as well continue as the main thinking. Now, I want to talk about this line. This line is called, in historic planning, U10. I'm connecting it to U3, but that's just me. Usually it would go somewhere else. So the plan has always been like this. You're going to take a line. I'm going to actually crayon a little farther extension, maybe. From somewhere around here. So this was planned in the West in the 70s. and the eventuality of reunification. Even in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, they had ideas for what to do if there was reunification. So, for example, when they renumbered all the U-Bahn lines with U and a number, they skipped U5 because they had this line, which was purely Eastern, would be U5 after reunification, which is what happened. And so they had U1, U2, which was around here in the west and was going to connect here in the east. U3, which was at the time not a. So right now U3 is a branch of U1. So train every 5 minutes here, and then every 10, and every 10. This was a separate line with a force transfer. Or sometimes it was connecting to U2. It was in a lot of variation. U4, the not very useful one. U5, U6 was the main north-south. U7 was the branch of the north-south that was turned into a weird northwest-southeast. U8, U9. And then they had the idea for a line called U10, which is the one that I'm coloring, and maybe not the best color, as part of U3. So the idea was to start maybe here, and then you go like this, do northeast from Alexanderplatz. There's already a tram here, so the busiest trams, as you might expect, are the trams that get you. Let me see if I can. So this link also has trams, but I guess they don't. Okay, so thankfully, I think it actually link rotted, and I had to and I had to find the correct link. So, this is so don't click here, but you can click on the post, and it's gonna give you a source. So, it's the network, and this is just before the opening, so this is still dashed. S-Bahn. And these are the differences. So, for example, you can see, so the big differences are when they started interlining U3 and U1. So this meant less service on the orphan part of U1, which is around every 5 minutes, but way more service on the shared trunk. And this is U55, which did not exist before, so it's looking like there's so much extra service. This is the actual ridership of Bildung 6. And I don't want Differenz, I want I want Nachfrage. And absolute Nachfrage. Again, I don't want Differenz. Okay, you're showing me that there's more ridership. You might notice that there's some decline in the east, not just Buffalo. The central parts of the system are very healthy. I don't want to. And yeah, so this is the map. Of the busiest buses and trams in the city. So as I said, the bus from Steglitz is rather busy. It's just that they can just beef up U-Bahn S-Bahn frequency with better electronics. There's there are a lot of buses feeding Spandau, hence the motivation for the U7 extension. This is to the airport. I actually took it once when the S-Bahn was out. And I had to take the U-Bahn to the bus. And of course, the trams are busier, as expected. They have more capacity, and the busier lines get rail substituted. This is Märkisches Viertel, so you can expect that this is also something that should be turned into a bus. Into an U-Bahn. This is to Tegel. There's no more Tegel, but there should also be an U-Bahn here. So you kind of see how the main U-Bahns are being rail substituted. Or I guess Kurfürstendamm is the main exception, but this should also be probably rail substituted. with like the U1 extension. Um, and so look at the trams. The main trunks are this, and this. This is, I think, M2, M4, and then M5, 6, 8. Except I think M8 might also be reverse branching here. The line that goes the entire orbit is called M10. Yeah, they used letters, and it's not just East Berlin. There were letters on these, and then the numbers are from the are a post-war number. I mean, even the word U-Bahn is um, from the 1920s. The U-Bahn is actually named after the U-boats. So they just said the trains of the city, and then and I think that the term U-Bahn might actually be an artifact of the S-Bahn. So they started saying U-Bahn versus S-Bahn when they started getting both in the 1920s with S-Bahn electrification. Before then, they just I think Berlin Volksbahn or something. So, oh, in 1968 already they have the numbers and they denote, yeah, so Moritzplatz is the first station that exists in Heinrich mine is the first that doesn't, and yeah. And you only goes to Gesundbrunnen, U2 and the parts that are closed. Warschauer Straße was also closed, but the rest of U1 was just western. Ulandstraße, I guess, was U3 as a branch in U1. So all of these trains, I mean, there are a bunch of different places. Like you have U1, like yeah, not U1. You have right now it's U2 to Ruhleben and U1 to Ulandstraße and U3 to Krummelanke, but they have all been flipped. And the system lets you do that. Um, and U4 was always just this sad little thing. Um, and you can kind of see the growth of U8 extensions very slowly. They only got to Wittenau after unification. Anyway, so these are the main trunks for the trams, and you can kind of even see that they're busiest before they drop passengers at the Ringbahn because the tram is slow and the train is fast. So, what they should be doing is picking one of these and turning it into an U-Bahn. And I believe that the U10 plan was this one, which is what I'm drawing. It is not Prenzlauer Allee. Prenzlauer Allee is this one. M2. It's Greifswalder. So M4, and then the M5 6 thing is Landsberger. So pick this or this, whichever you like more. You might also note that today the stretch between Frankfurter Allee and Schönhauser Allee is the longest stretch between two connecting line between two radials on the ring. So here we have one, so U2 to U8. Here we have one U8, and it's also the north-south tunnel, U8 slash north-south tunnel to U6, U6 to U9, 2 stops to U7, 2 stops to U2, Westkreuz for the Stadtbahn, 1, 2, 3 stops for U3, U9, U4, S1, Südkreuz, so that's S2, 25, 26, U6 for Tempelhof. This is a non-stop segment today. So remember, this is a gray station, so infill for the new development, which should happen. U8, U7, 1, this is infill, 2, 3 stops for Ostkreuz. I think this might actually be the second longest stretch for that station. Without connecting lines. And then this one. So this is a good one for a penetration. This is also good. So you penetrate with this U10 line, which was being planned, and there even have been some bell mouths underneath some some space left for stations when they built older stations, because they had the idea of expansion. It's like New York. Berlin is city that's in many ways trading on its name, trading on its past. It was one of the largest and wealthiest cities in the world until some Austrian with this really bad taste in facial hair came here. Um, and the result is that a lot of the plans are revivals. Now, obviously, the city has changed, so they're not building U-Bahn. They're thinking of doing this. They're doing Märkisches which didn't exist at the time. It's a post-war project. Connection to Schönefeld and onward to BER, which was not the main airport of the city. The main airport for the city before the war was Tempelhof, and so on. So again, taking into account that the city has changed, but also where possible, look at old plans and see where they fit, and this plan fits. Now, instead of turning this into a tram, now, I mean, what do you mean turning this? This already exists as a tram. They're building this tram, which is not a bad idea, but this needs more. I think this needs more speed and more capacity than this, especially because of the growth of Potsdamer Platz as a destination. So you absolutely want an all grade separated approach here. So you do this, and then maybe another. I think the way U-turn works is that it's going to have another stop at Rote Stadthaus together with U5, and then it just goes direct under Leipziger Straße. Now you might ask yourself, wait a sec, these are all this is this beautiful wide arterial. What is U2 doing not going on the arterial but slaloming around? Well, the answer is this had a tram. The tram company didn't give permission for the city to build the subway, so the city just gave up and built the subway like this before World War One. So problems with property acquisition, problem with private-public interface with infrastructure, they go back. I mean, the idea that there was a golden age of laissez-faire or something that was only in Britain, and it was not a golden age growth in Britain in the 19th century sucked. I mean, Britain was the hub of the Industrial Revolution. It was at the technological frontier of the world, but it was also at the beginning of the 19th century. It just grew. I think in the 19th century, Britain's per capita GDP growth was less than 1%. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that Rotterdam House has another set of platforms. That's what I thought. So Britain in the 19th century grew more slowly per capita than the United States has in the last 120 years. I say last 120 years in the United States because it took the United States and Germany both technologically overtook Britain around the late 19th century. The exact point is difficult to discern. The United States overtook Britain in GDP per capita per the site measuring worth in, I believe, 1905, 1906. And Germany, I think, only did well into the post-war era, but this was because Britain had a more efficient agricultural sector. Germany had actually fully converged with Britain, as I mentioned in a video a few months ago, by World War One in manufacturing, but it had a large, not very productive agricultural sector. So Germany was majority rural at the time, and it only went majority urban maybe in the 1930s, and the Nazis thought this was a horrifically immoral idea. The United States only went majority urban in 1920. Congress thought it was such an immoral idea that it did not redistrict in the 1920s. So the congressional districts from the 1920s actually follow 1910 populations, not 1920, because the idea of a majority urban America seemed so outlandish. And it's not because Britain was any more pro-urban. On the contrary, Garden City suburbanization, the idea of the satanic mills, that's British as well. Romanticism is a plague everywhere. And I know that I'm saying this while there's a plague going on right now, and I think it's actually, and I mean, it's not like cities are materially less Kvaldenko than rural areas. There, to some extent, like Gilets jaunes type rioting happens in cities coming from people who come from outside the cities, but usually these people are in suburbs, but just have a very ideologically anti-urban identity. It is that urban is bad. The urban is too modern, too diverse, too scientific, too educated, too triple parentheses for Jews. It's always been like this, and you just need to fight it. And at any rate, so But technologically, Germany and the United States caught up, and there's actually been faster technological growth in the last 100, 120 years than in the previous 100 to 120 years, because 19th century Britain had rather sucky institutions for this. Um, and but anyway, here we had a very developmental state. Like Germany was probably the original developmental state even before Japan. So mix of public and private. There was friction, which by the way there also was with pure private things in Britain. And U2 was built on a sucky alignment, so now this alignment is available for this kind of U10 line, but I don't think it should be U10. So the plan for U10 was always to do this. Go until here, so this is Kulturform, and then do what the tram is supposed to do. Go here. Go on Hauptstraße, and then go to Steglitz. So the idea for U10, you could kind of trace it on the thing here, was do this or maybe this on this tram, Potsdamer Platz, and then the route of the current bus to Steglitz. And this is not an actually good idea. So this is from, okay, 200-kilometer plan. We are, I think, 150. So this is the original plan. So start from Weissensee. So what I think of what I drew here is the western of the two branches. So you have to go here. Or maybe go here either way, or even branch them, and then Potsdamer Platz on Leipziger Straße, and then they had this idea. And then maybe even continue further. But there's U9 here, which is even seen here with an existing tunnel. But Steglitz doesn't need extra service, is the thing. I mean, yes, the buses are crowded, but let's look what it means for a bus to be crowded. So this is the width, and what does this width mean? So the absolute most is 80, and this is not the 80 width. This is maybe the 40-ish thousand passengers a day. These can very efficiently be rail instituted. So you don't want to go here. You do want to go here because this is an U-Bahn desert, or here. And then you go, so you do something like this, maybe? Or again, this, I'm uncertain, and I probably should move this. And then you don't need to build more because there's so much U-Bahn infrastructure here. The U-Bahn desert is northeast, not southwest. So you build where you can. This was actually being thankfully already planned, which was so this was planned as an extension of U1. So Uhlenstraße, and then somewhat different from what I'm creating, but this to Theodor-Heuss-Platz, what is today U2. But why not just take over U3? And this is kind of the weird thing where ideally you want to draw things at the end so that you have U2, you have three lines on the Kleinpassweg, right? The one to Panko, the one to Weissensee, and the one to Friedrichshain. And then on the other side, there's one line to almost but not quite Spandau, one that's called Fürstendamm, or maybe farther west, and one that is going southwest to eventually Mexico Platz. Ideally, you want them paired so that, unless there's some really important reason to do something else, you want to probably pair so that they all flip. So the southernmost connects with the northernmost, middle to middle, middle to middle, and then northernmost to southernmost. But I am a little bit squeamish, I must say, about moving too many things. And this is where, again, it's maybe me being squeamish, and I should stop being squeamish. Propose to do what they propose, so the U10 bit connects with the present day U1, and then present day U2 and U3 flip eastern destinations, maybe. But again, I don't want to. It's kind of a weird thing, and Berlin has a weird. I mean, the recoloring is going to be weird, and Berlin also has a weak line identity, so things get moved between lines and rolling stock gets moved between lines all the time. Tokyo has strong line identity, Paris has strong line identity, and meanwhile I'm gonna move this to other possibilities. The line that connectors, because we saw on this is okay, so we should go here and then this. I think this is correct. Okay, and then wait, where are the stops? And I'm not saying I'm wedded with the stops, but let's just look at what they actually wanted to do. Wait. Oh no, it didn't go like this. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense because this is actually a more central location. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so you might know that. So this is the Falkenberg Straße stop, roughly. Yeah, this. And then the station that gets to Hagenheim Weissensee is this. And then, okay, I see what they're doing. And then, like it didn't go beyond, but, and then it are they planning, were they planning on this? No, it's gonna be like this. Yeah, so this is actually better. A little bit more circuitous, but but the point is that the center of Weissensee is here more than here. Even if this is a kind of cool area, and by cool area I mean I just started writing a World War III battle there. Um, so you can kind of say like the kind of center of Weissensee is more like here. So you probably want this to be the Weissensee station. Which is going to look weird because these stations are going to be very closely spaced, but sometimes that is the correct thing to do. So Pilzerstraße, whatever you want to call this. Um, Ribnitzerstraße, um, this one. It's not this one. Yeah, it's a very low density area. As I said, I'm not fully wedded to these plans. Um, Something like this, maybe. I mean, if you went direct, then you'd probably go stop, 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 stop. So, I mean, this is one extra stop, essentially, over a more direct route. Yeah. You should probably, yeah. So it would be, yeah. So the climb profile bit is annoying. So the correct thing to do it. So what they do in New York. So New York also has its Kleinprofil and Großprofil. The Kleinprofil is the numbered line, and the Großprofil is the lettered line. And the train width on on the numbered line, so the IRT is actually more than on the Großprofil here. So no. Um, so what you do is you build the line to the specs of the wider network, but then you have slightly wider platforms. So if you ever change this, you can just shave back the platforms, and you don't need to rebuild anything. Whereas the older lines in New York, just like the older lines here, have some clearances to columns and tunnel walls that make it impossible to widen the trains. Uh, so yeah, Großprofil trains are 265 meters wide. And I believe the New York City subway, instead of eight and I think it's 8 feet 9. Um, Yeah, there's an entire section in Wikipedia just about problems in the last 12 years. Rolling stock. Oh, yeah, 8, 9, and then 10 on the letter lines. And here it's a hair less. So the gospel field here, it's 265, a hair less than the narrower trains in New York, which are pretty narrow. And then the client profile is even narrower than that. So yeah, I would build. So you build it to gospel. So you build everything to gospel in New York too. When they built, say, the 7 extension in New York, they built it to lettered line standards, even understanding that it will only ever run a numbered line. Actually, almost all of the 7 in New York. So it might not look easy on this map because so I can just retrace it for you. So 7 starts here. It's not shown as a map because Google Earth is sometimes out of date. So this is the 7. Has this weird circular thing here, and then it goes here, and it shows as a line because it's elevated. All of this is built to the wider standards, the BMT standards, except the tunnel across the river, which was built to even narrower standards and had to be widened multiple times just to get to the just to get to a full size numbered line, so IRT. So they can't widen it any further, even though everything else, including in Manhattan, it's on the line is built to wider standards. Again, platforms would just need to be shaven. They actually did that. They when they built in New York this line, the 7, again, they knew it would be IRT size, but they built it to BMT. So the idea was this: they built everything to BMT specs, but the platforms were slightly wider to serve IRT trains and not BMT trains on lines like Lexington or 7th Avenue. So these lines, so Astoria and Flushing, were served by both BMT and IRT trains. BMT is the New York Großprofil, so letter lines. IRT is numbered lines, so it's kind of the Kleinprofil. And again, New York Kleinprofil is a hair wider than Berlin Großprofil. So the IRT and the BMT competed, each had its own lines. And the IR, so they did, so there was this weird idea that the IRT would run through their tunnel to Astoria and Flushing. The BMT would have its own trains to Astoria and Flushing, but they would have to change trains here to their own tunnel, which was under 60th Street, to Manhattan. And then when they unified the system, they realized this was kind of a messed up way of doing things. So they had all the IRT trains go to Flushing and all the BMT trains just go to Astoria. So they just shaved back the platforms a little bit and had their service here. So it's not a hard thing. And as I said, this is kind of a short line and it's rather busy, but they can spam more frequency on it if they move things around a little bit better. So that's why, as I said, it should be widened, not widened, it should be lengthened to create more ridership for the extra capacity. And it's the same with going northwest in Berlin, or going west in Berlin. Yeah, you can connect it to yes, you can connect it to U5. But the problem is that then, I mean, U5 already runs every 5 minutes here, and it's, I mean, I'm not saying it's the busiest line ever, it really isn't, um, but it is a rather high ridership line here. So I'm a little bit squeamish about reducing the frequency on this. I mean, I guess you could do something like every 7.5 here and then every 7.5 here, but then you would kill the time to transfer here as the problem. So you have to do multiples of 5 or 10. You can do 5 and 5, that's fine. I mean, every 2.5 minutes on U-Bahn is not unheard of. It's just, it might actually be just too much service on the central segment. So this is why I'm a little bit squeamish. Whereas this also has the benefit of going to Potsdamer Platz. And then you do this thing where you extend U4 one more stop, as if that'll make it slightly less useless. And you do this. So you have this kind of northeast to southwest line. which is not going to be used all the way. I mean, obviously, like if you, I mean, people going from, was it Hohenbrücke? I think, Hohenstrasse. Um, People going from the, what is it? Hohenhausen. Hohenschönhausen. So people going from Hohenschönhausen to Potsdamer Platz are not going to do this. They're definitely not going to do this on a tram, but even when the S-Bahn, but even with an U-Bahn available, I imagine that with through service, they're just going to do this U-75 or whatever it's called then, and then either change at Hauptbahnhof to S21 or to S1 or S2 S-Bahn, or change with the U-Bahn here. There are a bunch of options, but I imagine that they're gonna go like this because it's because even though it's a little more circuitous, it's also fewer stops, and that's when it's just faster. But for basically everything else, like even people from around here would just take it all the way. That's fine. That's great. And definitely people going all the way to Mexico Platz are not going to do this. They're going to do something like floop to floop, and that's fine. In the same way that you might as well say, wait, why have local trains? Because the express, because if you go very long distance, you'll take the express. Well, yeah, but not everyone goes 25 kilometers. I don't know what the one-way average trip length is in Berlin. I can check this with passenger kilometers versus passengers, but I know in New York on the subway, the average unlinked trip, I believe it's 10 kilometers. And now we're going to see which one is the correct link and which is the link that rotted. So it's not going to be this one. For some reason, there's a link rot on the internet. I used to be very mad at it, but keep it to myself because I thought it was a silly thing to be mad at, and now I am mad at it, and I'm openly mad at it because I understand that it's a common problem that people have. So in New York, this is unlinked trip, so it's 2.6 billion. It's not the actual subway ride ship in America, it's more like 1.7. But here they're multi-counting transfers. So I guess you're right. I guess it was doing weird conversion from kilometers to miles. So if you do this, then it's 5.9 miles, so about 9 kilometers one way. But that is even taking transfers into account. One-way trips without transfers, which is what matters for local versus express, it's 6.1 kilometers. So in, oh, minor problem, with my changing, oh, the junctions are not set up for you want to change western end, yeah. Remember, I'm not changing these. Um, what I'm proposing is that U2 stays U2, U1, U3 stay U1 and U3. So I'm not actually proposing flipping the terminals, even though, again, this was done historically. Um, Ooh, thank you for the track map. Um, yeah, so Wittenberg plots. Oh, okay, yeah, so the idea is that yeah, so yeah, so there's this unfinished station here for U10 plus here, and then I guess the problem is that it's only set up. Oh, I see what you mean. So it's only set up to force you to change, right? Because if it goes like this, then it's ideally going to U1. I see what you're doing, and then um, U2 essentially is forced to go where U2 goes today, which is really annoying that it can't flip. And then U1 is what? This or U3. But I mean, I guess the problem is they only have this connection, they don't have this connection. Um, um, but, and likewise, they only have this connection. They don't have, I guess, this connection. Yeah, that is annoying. That is annoying. That might force U1 to permanent coupled. Again, it's possible. It's just really annoying. Again, I'm trying to keep the colors more than anything for U1, U2, U3, just because they're a system that's so. It's not interlined right now. I mean, U1 and U3 are branches of the same trunk, but it's not reverse branch or anything. But this is something where you can just flip these for the most part, based on what the Ingrell lets you do. Um, but yeah, you're right. And thanks for the track line. So yeah, so that's the idea of what I think should be done with U1 and S-Bahn. I mean, again, there are always little connections you can do, like maybe U2 all the way to Spandau. But that's mostly just going to be for the connectivity from Wohlleben to Spandau because Spandau already has so much existing stuff. I mean, it's a Regionalbahn stop. And remember, we're talking about moving intercity lines to these north-south tunnels. And so if intercity lines move to these north-south tunnels, then the Stadtbahn is just being used for regional trains. These regional trains can come every 5 minutes to various destinations. And this means that Spandau potentially gets a train every 10 or 15 minutes to Berlin that's express. Or even every 20 would not be terrible. So Spandau is already very amply served in this. So it's really just about connecting Wohlleben to this, which is not a terrible idea. I mean, the Mexico Plus idea is similar. Um, was there ever such a plan to do this? By the way, there's this random thing that used to be a branch of U2 that no longer exists. Yeah, I mean, they're portraying it as a possible expansion. I mean, there are all these possible expansions of the drawing. At one point, by the way, and I was crayoning, instead of going to Gesundbrunnen, I was crayoning Hegel as an expansion of S21 from here or something like that. It's just, I don't know how much I would endorse that today. Um, and note that U6 is being branched here, and branching isn't great for frequency, but U6 already has. U6 is the one that already has 4-minute peak frequency sometimes, as opposed to just 5 minutes. So it's absolutely doable. And then yeah, off peak it might be 10 minutes per branch, but whatever, 10 minutes per branch. In the evenings, a lot of lines do that, and Millingdom has the time transfer anyway. And finally, I mean, I already drew with the Panko extensions. I think are useful. And they're being planned, so it's not like me crayoning, it's something that the city is crayoning. The only thing that's really me crayoning without the city is this, which is not just me, it's also a technical advocacy group in the city that I'm not involved in, and the U10 restoration idea. I guess maybe U1 to Ostkreuz might be possible, might be crayoning, but this was actually studied. And again, you don't have to do it. I mean, the tracks kind of don't point in this direction; they point in this direction. But again, it's something to consider, I would say, not necessarily something to do. Especially, I mean, the Amazon Tower is being built here, so it's not like Warschauer Straße is nothing. Warschauer Straße is actually an important destination, growingly important one with the growth in Södersheim. So this is roughly where I'm at with Berlin U-Bahn expansion. I mean, if people have, I mean, I guess there's also the U5 idea. The idea is that you take U5 and actually, let me see if it's in the track plan. It's not going to be here because it's U-Bahn. It's Gleisplan. Um, so yeah, you see that there's this, and there's even a proposal to connect U5 here to Turmstrasse. This was the original idea of how to get to Tegel, and you can even see infrastructure for cross-platform transfer, not at Jakob Kreisel, but at Jungfernheide. So this is actually not a terrible idea, especially if something bigger happens out of Tegel. I don't want to do this. I want to do so Turmstrasse is where the platforms are. And then I don't know if the plan is to go under Kaiserlin Augustale or further north. I think it's like this. Although, I mean, I don't need to check this. I don't need to guess, I can check this. So Altmoabit, Turmstrasse, Hüttenstraße. Yeah, okay, so the northern option. Goslar Platz, yeah, okay. Jungfernheide. What's the next one? Hackenfelde, and then Urban Tech Republic, and yeah, so this is Heckerdam, and then for some reason it's called Schellenboden. This, by the way, all need to be big buildings, but as I said, not really how they think in terms of which one is and Rathaus Reichersdorf, which is really weird. Wait, is that on U8? Where the hell are they going with this? Yeah, and like with many things in Berlin, this has been downgraded to a tram because the Greens don't recognize that this is a downgrade and they think it is something different. And I guess this is the Urban Tech Republic that they're talking about. So, and I'm just going to draw it going here. So there's this. I don't remember the color. I'll look at it in a sec. And what is the color here? 1288251. Yeah, like this. And we literally just saw a list of stations. So Alt Moabit. Move this to be the intersection. Yes. Where's that Platz? Goslarer Platz. Wait, is it gonna wait? Am I being dumb? Oh, it is not in Hüttenstrasse. It's supposed to be like this. Okay. So it is here. Okay. Oh, okay. So this needs to be a little different, I guess. It said Hüttenstrasse. I'm trying to do this. Okay. No, I don't. This is specifically two lines that are supposed to run next to each other. I'm trying not to have them run right, like this. Okay. And then what do we want before the Urban Tech Republic? I think the Haken. But honestly, it's just something that should just be this. So, as I said, I'm not too wedded to plans, especially not to stop spacing farther out where, and if they want, I don't know, I can vaguely see this if they try to redevelop more, maybe. But certainly nothing that loops back to Lighthouse line. So where's the Lighthouse line? Back to here. Yeah, I don't think that should go like this. This is it's kind of weird and loopy and like try to be straighter. I mean, I keep saying things like people should be queer and train lines and bus lines should be straight. Like you want to go if this is an east-west line, go east-west. Don't go east loop-de-loop north. I think this is it. I mean, honestly, this can be called at this point. I mean, you won't do the loop-de-loop specifically if this doesn't happen, I guess. But if this does, then why not? Then just do this. And so, yeah, this is wind S-Bahn expansion. Unfortunately, the Greens are rather NIMBY about this. Can't tell if this is a good expansion. I don't think so. Are there any questions? Because it's been 3 hours almost. And I do need to upload eventually. So if anyone has any questions about this or about Ukrainian or about Berlin, please shoot. This shirt, by the way, is Yearly Coast 2006. There are these Networks Nation conferences, conventions, whatever you want to call them, that back when they were still called Yearly Coast rather than Daily Coast, as opposed to like Daily Coast. I went to the first one. And all I got was this lousy t-shirt. And Euro-splainers from Eurotrip telling me that how dare I say that there's racism in Europe that's as bad as or worse than in the United States. Like Jérôme Appelé from Eurotrip. Eurocrat's gonna Eurocrat. If there are no questions, I'm gonna end at 9:15 for the 3 hours exact. If there are, I can stay up until about 9:30, I think. By the way, this has been a very active chat, so thank you. So thanks for this. It's much more fun, at least for me, if there's a lot of audience participation. I don't know whether watchers prefer this kind of back and forth or just want me to lecture for 2 hours. But I do aim to please. To some extent, at least. Oh, thank you for watching. Both of you. Oh, thanks all of you. And don't forget to do what I mentioned at the beginning and sign up for Modernizing Rail. This one. I'm not gonna post this again. I'm gonna post this on YouTube. And if you're in New York or interested in New York, I have this thing called Our Mobility that we're about to debut, with exciting plans for what to do in the city and what not to do in the city. A lot of this kind of German technical advocacy tradition that already is happening in the United States in Boston rather successfully, and in Philadelphia, and we're bringing it to New York. So things like how to set up an S-Bahn, how to build things. You can still have questions even if you ate. I mean, I sometimes eat cookies on stream. I mean, sometimes eat normal food. I mean, not now, but in the second lockdown, I would constantly get takeout and then eat dinner or eat lunch on screen on Zoom with calls with colleagues or with people who work for me or sources that I'm interviewing. It's a thing. Yeah. So thank you all for watching. I will upload this on YouTube, hopefully very soon, and I will see you in a week with another video.